Who's your favorite Batman? It's a polarizing question, but it really does reveal a lot about a person. If someone loves Christian Bale, then they probably consider themselves a connoisseur of fine cinema, who loves following the difficult and nuanced journey of a hero. If they say Ben Affleck, then they probably love Frank Miller's gritty Dark Knight comic run and enjoy getting into super passionate Twitter debates. And if they love Adam West, then they probably really love drugs. With an 80-year track record, everyone has their own opinion on how Batman should be presented. And in 2012, a theater troupe named Team Starkid flipped a middle finger to them all. Compared to the recent hyper-serious representations on film and a majority of the comics, the Caped Crusader in Holy Musical Batman is a multicolored jackass. He ruthlessly beats up people just because he can, harbors a deep jealousy over Superman's strength, and doesn't shy away from lamenting his loneliness. For 7 angsty minutes, the musical follows this troubled hero on a twisted journey of friendship that pits him against other comic book icons and a massive rogues gallery even more ridiculous than the Bat himself. But to fully understand and appreciate the absurdity of Holy Musical Batman, we first have to meet Team Starkid. 2009. The Black Eyed Peas' I Got a Feelin' played on an inescapable loop, Glee just started airing, and everyone lived in a constant fear of spontaneous flash mobs. Meanwhile, a group of 4 friends from Michigan grappled with sudden internet fame. As briefly mentioned in previous videos, actor Darren Criss, Brian Holden, and brothers Nick and Matt Lang staged a small Harry Potter parody musical named A Very Potter Musical and posted it online. With the concept of online video sharing still in its infancy, posting the musical on YouTube expanded its reach exponentially. The show spread like wildfire, garnering millions of views and setting the foundation for a die-hard cult following. Soft-spoken men of the written word, Matt and Nick Lang helped write the hilarious script for A Very Potter Musical. And as Matt looked to the future, there seemed to be only one logical next step. They'd explored the world of wizards, why not explore the world of superheroes? Specifically Batman. Being 1 year removed from Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight, the character was on everybody's minds, and with how seriously the new movies took themselves, the two saw Batman as the perfect foil for parody. Matt Lang even went so far as making a poster for the new musical, featuring the show's bold new title, Holy Musical Batman. A play on the catchphrase of the 1960s series, the title posed an interesting and hilarious premise. What if the dark and edgy Batman of the late 2000s lived in the groovy and cartoonish world of the original TV show? After some brainstorming, the team ultimately decided against Batman and moved forward on an original musical called Me and My Dick, a show about a guy who's best friends with his, Coming off the success of this show, Matt Lang once again voiced his desire to make the Batman musical. He got outvoted, leading to the troupe revisiting the wizarding world in A Very Potter sequel. It would only be after 3 false starts, a slew of partially composed songs, and countless rough drafts until the team finally agreed to pursue Holy Musical Batman. The dynamic duo of Matt and Nick Lang got to work on the script, creating a narrative that commented not only on the character of Batman himself, but also the history of the franchise as a whole. In particular, they wanted to shine a spotlight on one character who always seemed to be treated as an afterthought. Robin. Originally appearing in April of 1940, the Boy Wonders creation spawned from a necessity to grow youth readership. Looking at popular comics of the time, a large majority boasted eye-catching colors and painfully optimistic heroes. The noir roots and embrace of the shadows made Batman pretty scary and unrelatable in comparison. Writer Bob Kane and Bill Finger introduced Robin to counter this tough and dark persona by having Robin be bright, spunky, and totally unashamed to not wear pants in public.
If I can grow up without parents, you can grow up without pants.
After the Boy Wonders introduction, sales for the comic practically doubled overnight. But the introduction of a child sidekick brought with it a new conundrum. What kind of a lunatic adopts an 8-year-old kid and enlists him to stop a psychotic, murderous clown? Robin's debut in many ways forced the comics to deviate away from any scenarios of actual danger in favor of much more family-friendly predicaments. Stories where Batman would get blasted with a ray gun and turn into a bat baby, or where the two stop a ghost from haunting a library. Oh, and don't forget the one where the two travel back in time to fight alongside the Three Musketeers. The comics became more and more absurd, translating directly into the live-action television series. Compared to the first attempt at bringing the hero to the small screen in 1949, the show beamed with mesmerizing Technicolor flair and so many puns.
I must say, this youth's face makes an excellent impression.
Who says penguins can't fly?
Oh, how delightful. I wonder what cut of beef this is. Oh!
It's cold cuts.
Hey, alarm!
The ridiculous adventures hooked both kids and parents alike. But as the 70s rolled around, many show viewers and comic readers started to sour on both, and voiced their desire to see Batman return to his darker roots. Comic creator Frank Miller shared this desire, and in a seeming repudiation of all that came before, he introduced perhaps the grittiest interpretation of the character to date. 1986's The Dark Knight Returns. Gotham City's vibrant color palette drained into a grim, monotone reality. Batman himself from a corny one-liner hero to a grizzled and battered nightmare. As the stories became even darker and edgier, any presence of Robin stuck out like a sore thumb. And structurally, the character took away from the tortured nature of Batman. In an excellent dissection of the character, Patrick H. Willems deduces that the tendency to hyper-focus on the first half of the Batman mythos plays a role in Robin's absence from many of the films. Instead of focusing in on the latter version of Batman, where he learns how to care for someone other than himself, i.e. Robin, studios tend to favor the brooding, isolated, and somewhat selfish version of the vigilante. The fact that the unnaturally peppy Robin stood in such contrast to the gloomy Dark Knight served as one of the major selling points for Matt and Nick Lang, choosing to explore the ridiculous story of how two polar opposites became best friends. Then, of course, what's a great superhero without an equally great supervillain? As far as comic books go, Batman has one of the richest rogues gallery in history. But out of all of them, there was no bigger villain than the Joker. Much like Robin, the Joker's bright and elaborate nature also posed a striking juxtaposition to the world's greatest detective, albeit in a much more terrifying way. Whether it's the 1960s series or the Frank Miller comics, Joker is possibly the only funny character in any Batman story, possessing this morbid humor that only makes him that much more terrifying. Great for the comics and the TV show, horrible when writing a parody musical.
The Joker as a character, like, you think about his entire character, and he's just a guy who tells jokes while being, he's a goofball while being extraordinarily violent. So that's the whole crux of his character, is that it makes the violence even worse because he's dealing with it like lightheartedly.
Eventually became that our joke for the Joker was that he wasn't funny. And then we said probably the least funny joke is that a guy isn't funny.
The two ultimately decided that the most interesting thing they could do with the Joker was kill the Joker. And so that's what they did, killing him off with one throwaway line right at the beginning. Getting rid of the Joker opened the floodgates of creativity, making it easier for the Langs to key in on other, more spoofable villains. In the same vein of the 1960s Batman, the puns got dialed up to 11, leaving every villain with a series of lines that truly packed a punch.
Because of Batman, my operations have been put on ice. My assets are frozen.
I've been uprooted.
He's giving me an awful fright.
We better catnip this thing in the bud before that mouse with wings sends us all to the pound. Meow.
But with the bold execution of the Joker, the story still needed a central villain. Instead of picking an already known character, the Langs decided to create their own. A demented Willy Wonka maniac that spoke only in candy puns. Sweet Tooth. The decision to create Sweet Tooth came from a belief that there was no way a character this stupid existed. But in a shocking revelation months later, the two found out that he actually did. The character became instrumental to the show's conflict, concocting a plan alongside other Batman villains, as well as a few characters from the public domain, to do the one thing they'd never thought of doing before: killing the Batman. The conflict relied on the real-life fan backlash towards Robin, with Sweet Tooth forcing Gotham City to decide whether he kills the Boy Wonder or poisons the city's water supply with a lethally sour warhead. And if the song Robin Sucks served as any indication, Gotham City's decision looked like a pretty easy one to make. Before long, the brothers emerged with a finished script for Holy Musical Batman that walked the line between heartfelt sentiment and batshit lunacy. But what would the rest of Team Starkids say? Would they finally make the Batman musical? Or would it be lights out for the Caped Crusader stage show? No need to make a scene. We'll find out after this. Matt Lang's wish of doing a Batman musical hung precariously in the balance. After 2 years of false starts, this was the furthest they'd come to staging the show. The script was a mix of corny and angsty, a bold foray into the world of superheroes. But would the Langs heroically overcome their hatred for typing? There's only one way to find out. Okay, maybe it wasn't that dramatic, because everyone loved it and decided to move forward with the project. Nick Lang himself would bear it all on stage as Robin, and former Voldemort actor Joe Walker donned the famous tights and cowl of the woebegone hero, Batman. When thinking of superheroes, there always seems to be a conflict between two: Batman and Superman. By all means, Soup should take the cake in the popularity contest. He's super strong, he can fly, and he's the literal embodiment of doing the right thing. Batman, on the other hand, has unresolved trauma and makes 12-year-old kids eat rats. And yet, compared to Superman's clean-cut Boy Scout image and indestructible essence, the more grounded and complicated Batman has always seemed to win more people over. The Langs worked this observation that people preferred Batman over Superman into the actual script. This results in a conflict that pits Walker's power-hungry Batman in direct odds against Brian Holden's fame-envious Superman. On the villain front, the Langs approached actor and college friend Chris Allen to help bring the maniacal character of Sweet Tooth to life. That is until they heard his Michael Caine impression.
But Master Wayne, you love this plane.
No, I hate that plane. It's a slow plane. Just destroy it.
It's not just your plane. It's your father's plane. And it's all that's left of him.
And with a voice like that, they had no choice but to rework the script and cast him as Alfred. But now who could play the sugar-plum villain of crime? Who could possibly embody this dastardly, deranged megalomaniac?
If you ask me to be a maniac, I can be a maniac.
If there's ever a list ranking favorite Starkid performers, Jeff Blim is always sure to find a spot. His versatility and comedic timing has made him a standout. But in 2012, Blim was a regional theater actor, coming up short in his pursuit of the Broadway dream.
When I was in New York, I stopped auditioning and I was just writing at some point. I got sick of auditioning and I was working on my Oregon Trail musical. And I was like, I don't need to be paying rent if I'm not auditioning out here. And so I moved back home to Chicago to work on my Oregon Trail musical with Chris Allen, who was in Holy Musical Batman.
Being 1 year above Nick and Matt Lang in college, Blim possessed a tangential awareness of the group, attending their first inaugural spoof on The Hobbit back in college, and hearing of a Harry Potter musical as it became a viral smash. Blim's hyperactive energy mixed with a smile that could make the Cheshire Cat jealous, and at Alan's recommendation, the Langs invited him to audition at their home in Chicago.
They wanted somebody to be an absolute maniac, and so you didn't need to ask me twice.
There was no debate. Blim was perfect. Almost immediately after he accepted the role, a friend back in New York City called to offer him a major audition with an off-Broadway musical. This could be a game changer for Blim's career, and even though it could cost them yet another villain, the Langs told him he had to go do the audition. As the cast for the show inched closer to finalization, the team came face to face with yet another hurdle: the actual music. A lot can change in 3 years, and thanks in large part to the popularity of the past Starkids shows, keyboard player AJ Holmes joined the national tour of the Book of Mormon, while Darren Criss got busy exciting everyone's hormones on Glee. In other words, Team Starkids' main composers vanished. Holy Musical Batman had the words, but now it lacked the melody. By summer of 2011, a musician named Nick Gage accepted an inconvenient truth. Being a few years removed from composing music during his college years, it seemed like the dream of writing comedic songs for a living finally reached the end of the line.
I didn't have a lot of focus because I was like, I like comedy and I like acting and I like music, and I was kind of trying to put them all together. And it's sort of it's tricky to assemble those things into one kind of coherent vehicle that can function as a career.
To help pass the time and earn a little bit of money, Gage made the next logical step in his transition away from music. He became a nanny. One beautiful spring day, he took the two kids to a local beach and coincidentally ran into another nanny. It was Meredith Stepien. A talented musician themselves, Stepien got involved with Starkid in a short-lived series called Little White Lie, and much like Gage, they loved writing comedic songs. It only took about 2 weeks of knowing each other before the pair started writing and performing together. Naturally, Gage started to mingle with Stepien's Team Starkid friends. Seeing how the troupe still desperately needed a composer, a copy of the script for Holy Musical Batman wound up in Gage's hands in November of 2011. He couldn't put it down. Each page made him laugh out loud and sprung to life with a wonderful 80s vibe. He was in. Gage spent the next 2 months composing alongside longtime friend Scott Lamps, working through the script chronologically. When writing the script, the Langs titled and placed where all the songs needed to happen, which left Gage and Lamps to bring those stage cues to life. With only 8 weeks to write and record all the music, nearly every weekend saw Gage making a 3-hour commute to Lamps' home in Madison, Wisconsin, just to work on the songs. Gage sent a handful of tracks to the Langs for approval, including an opening number, Holy Musical Batman, a raucous power anthem for the villains, Rogues Are We, and Dynamic Duet, which finds Robin and Batman violently beating up criminals to a cheesy 80s synth-pop power ballad.
They locked into, and I don't know that I was thinking this necessarily, but their brains went to the silliness of that riff. It's so poppy, and they were Joe just got giddy at the idea of ripping someone's throat out to that music, like these two guys discovering their, blossoming friendship and cementing it by just ripping out the throats of petty thieves.
Meanwhile, in New York City, a nervous Jeff Blim stood before a casting table. That did not go well, he thought.
And I do my audition, and I finish it, and the director goes, "You choreographed it." I bombed it. It was a terrible, terrible audition. And, when you said you choreographed it, I go, yeah, I really shouldn't have, huh?
With the audition falling through, Blim was officially committed as Sweet Tooth, and the music was nearing completion. The team moved into rehearsals at Straw Dog Studios in Chicago. The idea of people actually singing his songs made Nick Gage nervous. Just a few months ago, he had been planning on giving up music altogether. Now he needed to teach a bunch of strangers how to sing it? With each week that passed, Gage and Lamps eventually started to feel more at home with the troupe. They were blown away by everyone's work ethic and attention to detail. Despite their easygoing demeanor, when it came to rehearsals, the troupe got down to business, running as a well-oiled collaboration machine. It's believed that the troupe spent $150,000 out of their own pockets just to pay for the production. This largely came from 2 nationwide tours the company set out on. It was an absolutely insane amount, especially considering that legally, they couldn't even charge people for tickets due to the use of copyrighted characters. That being said, the money didn't go to waste, and resulted in one of the most visually stunning Starkid musicals to date. Its industrial flair, mixed with Sarah Petty's lighting design, created stunning visuals unlike any Starkid show before it. 1 week out from showtime, the set was built, costumes were in good shape, and the performances were solid. They just needed one last tiny thing: an entire final number. A huge celebration of friendship featuring too many superheroes to count, Nick Gage just couldn't crack Holy Musical Batman's grand finale, Super Friends. Eventually emerging from a bat cave of Doritos and energy drinks, the pair had a full final number. After 2 years of planning and only 8 weeks of rehearsals, Holy Musical Batman appeared ready to take to the sky. All they needed to do now was perform. Jeff Blim knew that people were gonna enjoy Holy Musical Batman, but he still didn't really understand how large and passionate the fan base for Team Starkid was. Blim responded skeptically when actress Jamie Lynn Beatty told him to join a site called Twitter, promising that he'd get thousands of fans immediately. A regular of the regional theater scene, Blim played to audiences where half of the people didn't want to be there, and the other half automatically thought he was gonna suck. But once he menacingly pranced on stage for Holy Musical Batman, he'd experienced what it was like to feel instantly loved by the audience. They weren't there to see him fail. They were there for a good time. And how did Blim repay this overwhelmingly warm and appreciative embrace? By accidentally hurtling his heavy wood cane directly into the crowd.
I was horrified. I was prepared to stop the show and call an ambulance. I totally dropped character because I was like, this is the end of my career, and I hope to God someone isn't dead. The crowd is so hyped that it's like, even if somebody got decapitated, I think they would have gone, yeah!
Compared to the predominantly calm and reserved audiences on Broadway, the unashamed passion of Team Starkid's crowds fuels each performance. Given how important the internet was in their rise to prominence, the troupe dedicates one night every run to record for their YouTube channel. Considering the millions of views each of their productions gets, filming night is the most important night of the run. Out of a 4-day slate, they only get one shot to immortalize the show forever. Recording a 2-hour show in high definition takes a lot of memory space. The original plan called for them to record the first act and then transfer the files onto an external hard drive during intermission, thus ensuring they'd have enough memory room to record Act 2. The team only had 15 minutes. Rapidly, they plugged the hard drive into the laptop and crickets. No matter what they tried, they couldn't get the hard drive to work. The frantic clicking, unplugging, and replugging persisted as the end of intermission crept closer. The real possibility of not being able to record the second act coming closer to fruition with each minute that passed. Just then, a light bulb went off. The Langs only lived 2 minutes from the theater. The crew sprinted to the house, plugged into the Langs' computer, and more crickets. For some reason, the computer wasn't responding. The team's heartbeats mirrored the beating clock, their anxiety rising as the end of intermission rushed towards them. Suddenly, by some miracle, the computer kicked to life and all the files got transferred. As intermission drew to a close, the audience returned to their seats, none the wiser to the chaos that just took place. Holy Musical Batman ran for 4 raucous nights, and on Friday, April 13th, 2012, the show was posted on YouTube. If Jeff Blim didn't know what Twitter was before, he certainly did now, as Jamie Lynn Beatty's prophecy came true, and he gained nearly 20,000 followers overnight. The reaction to the show was through the roof. While the music was a bold departure from what Starkid had become known for, original composer Darren Criss was vocal about how much he loved it. It's believed that after he won his first Emmy Award in 2018, Criss celebrated by playing Dark, Sad, Lonely Night, which is either really sweet or really heartbreaking. Over 10 years since his performance, the 13 parts of the musical currently sit at a combined nearly 10 million views. Holy Musical Batman is ridiculous. But really, isn't Batman himself? I mean, think about it. He's a multi-millionaire who spends his nights dressing up as a flying rodent and fighting a clown. To truly love a franchise or a character is to acknowledge and embrace its faults. Nick and Matt Lang kept this in mind as they wrote Holy Musical Batman. It poked fun at the absurdity of superheroes in a way that was endearing, filled with jokes and references that could only come from people who truly loved the medium. Everyone in the Hoover Leppen Theater was there for one reason: to have fun. And there's nothing wrong with that. Yes, the dark character study of a troubled orphan haunted by his parents' murder is fascinating and compelling. But one has to admit, seeing that same character ripping throats out while doing a kick line or giving Superman a wedgie is sort of a guilty pleasure. Much like the character of Batman himself, Holy Musical Batman symbolized an evolution in Team Starkid's style, and set the wheels in motion for what would become the troupe's golden age. Thanks to the internet, Starkid's reach expanded further than any theatrical production could dream of, and as such, the troupe continued to amass a horde of fans. But these weren't just any fans. These were Starkid fans. The independent spirit and the genuine charisma of the cast forged a die-hard bond between the company and its fan base. They didn't feel like divas or superstars. They just felt like dorky theater friends a person wanted to hang out with on a Friday night. To their fans, Starkid was more than a theater troupe. They were their bros, their amigos. And anywhere Team Starkid goes is where they go.